Friday morning. Your boy Tommy D, the one and only nonprofit sector. Wait for it. Connector, nonprofit sector connector. What does that mean? Well, it's an opportunity that I have in the universe where I get to spend time with special leaders and special employees and special volunteers, all in the nonprofit sector. You know, what happened to that? We know at the end of the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The show, by the way, is called Philanthropy and Focus before I rant and rave. But in that end of that movie, there's that everlasting gobstopper scene where Charlie was going to take the everlasting gobstopper and he brings it back and he gives it to Willy Wonka. And then Willy Wonka says, Charlie, you won my factory. And he says to Charlie, don't forget, Charlie, what happens to the little boy who got everything he ever wanted. And Charlie says, what's that, Willie? He says he lived happily ever after. And I will tell you this, I'm fortunate to be blessed with a family. Everyone's healthy, 4 wonderful children, a wonderful wife. And I get to spend all this time with the nonprofit sector. Last night with a dinner with some leaders here on Long Island in the nonprofit sector that was set up by the Nonprofit Resource Hub, which is an organization we founded, really doing its work to bring resources, education, in the form of webinars and other things and networking events and mixers together, bringing these leaders and nonprofits together to make, to really elevate the nonprofit sector to the best of our ability. So I'm blessed to have that opportunity. I'm blessed to have friends who want to come on my program. My guest today, Roberta Rosenberg. Good morning, Roberta. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great.
I'm glad to have you here. It wasn't the first time you and I discussed you coming on the show. So you were certainly like, Tommy D, what are we doing here? Like, why am I not on that show yet? So you were right on with that, and we put it all together. We're going to get into, as we do every week, the name of the organization is Destination Accessible. And I love, like, when you say the nonprofit sector connector, you can probably extrapolate, gang, from those words, what somebody who would be called that would do. If an organization is called Destination Accessible, you can probably read between the lines. I always thought it was not good when a company had 3 letters and then you were supposed to figure out what the heck those letters meant, right? Or 6 letters. The point is, unless if those 6 letters made a word, look at that. You know, shout out to Pat Sajak, you know, a little bit of Wheel of Fortune. I always wanted to be a game show host. I don't know if you knew that, Roberta Rosenberg.
No, I did not. But you'd be great.
Now you know. And I'm thinking of doing a game show. I think they have to be a little different now. I don't think it's like it's going to be more like maybe some AI driven game show. Anyway, we'll see how that all works out, but I am going to start doing a show at North Shore TV, a TV type program, maybe a little bit of podcast mixed in there too, but really focusing on obviously the great work that nonprofits do here on Long Island, but as well as just really cool people doing really special things that may not be employed by or involved with the nonprofit sector. So, we're going to see what that plays out to be. It's going to be fun. Maybe there's some game show going on too. This program, however, gives me the opportunity to every Friday morning walk up 2 flights of stairs. Well, I guess it doesn't give me the opportunity to walk. I was going to walk up the stairs anyway, but the point is I come up to the attic just below the roof of my house to do this program, Philanthropy and Focus. I do it every Friday. And it's my focus to help these nonprofit leaders tell their story and amplify their message. And I was just mentioning to Roberta, even before we got started, just how funny the world is and how connected everything is. Our company, Vanguard Benefits, has been sponsoring the Long Island Imagine Awards as a platinum sponsor in the Rising Star category. We've been doing that for the last 6 years or so. This year, the winner in that category was the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center here on Long Island in Glen Cove. And my business partner, Ed Probst, and I went out for a visit. And I was saying, hey, listen, this is great. Thank you so much for the tour. We appreciate this. It's a solemn place, reverend place. I said, I'd love to feature what you're doing on my program, Philanthropy and Focus. And, being a bit of a sales guy, saying that, people are going to go, what is that? What do you mean Philanthropy and Focus? So it opened up that dialogue. And I said, well, you can't come on Friday morning because Roberta Rosenberg is coming on the show from Destination Accessible. And the response I got was, Tommy, we're totally accessible. The Tolerance Center is totally accessible. I said, I wasn't calling you out. I was just saying Roberta's coming on the show. But what that does is it just goes to show the importance of collaboration, the importance of connection, because by bringing that up, I said to Roberta this morning, and we'll get into some of that, but I said, we need to get them on your website and add them to the list. What is this website? What is the list? What is what are these descriptions of these facilities and things like that? Roberta and I are going to talk about it today. If you plugged in for the last 170 Fridays, I've done this. then you realize that the show goes like this. Who is the leader? What are they doing in the world? Why did they either go into the nonprofit sector? Why did they create and found a nonprofit organization? That sort of stuff. And then we roll into what are the programs of the organization? What does the organization do? What's upcoming for the organization? How can you all get plugged into the organization and make an impact? Sometimes that impact might be writing a check. Sometimes that impact might be volunteering. We'll talk about that as it relates to Destination Accessible. And really it's what's upcoming for the organization. You know, are there events coming up? Do they need board members? Are they looking for this? Are they looking for that? I don't know. We always find out. So maybe this is a bit of a game show. It's kind of a quiz show at the end. You know, it's I like to call it the lightning round when we get to that part of the show. And we usually call it that. Logan, my engineer, and I call it that because usually I've run out of time and I'm trying to take a 17-minute segment and make it into the last 7 minutes. So we end up talking even faster, Roberta, than we're talking right now.
Oh, God.
I'm just joking a little bit. All right, let's get into this conversation. Roberta, we've known each other for a number of years. I don't know how we actually connected originally, but you've come to the round tables that Christine Deska and I have done for a number of years. You know, you're obviously connected to the Nonprofit Resource Hub as well. I don't know if you remember how we originally met. No, same. Yeah. All right, fair enough.
I
So
don't.
we know each other. We've been connected for years, for sure. Tell me a little bit about this journey, or tell me a lot of bit about this journey. Like I said, I don't actually know the story, although I'm looking at my notes. A bizarre accident. That's kind of a cliffhanger. Let's who is Roberta Rosenberg? What's your background, like career-wise and your interests and things like that? And really let's walk that to how did you end up creating this organization? Why did you create this organization?
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here. I have seen your show. It's always great. And so that's kudos to you for all you do for the nonprofit sector. And you really make the nonprofit sector more fun. So you'd be a great game show host. But
Thank you.
to tell you a little bit about me, so the majority of my life, I spent 40 years as a teacher. And I was in English as used to be called English as a second language. Now it's called English as a new language. And I had a great, great, great career. I loved my job. I loved my kids. It was wonderful. But it was, comes a time when you leave. And during that time while I was working, the story of how I got into Destination Accessible was my mom had polio when she was a child and was fine most of her life, but developed what's called post-polio syndrome towards the end of her life and was in a wheelchair. And that was in the early 2000s. And we would go and I would notice how difficult things were. And I have to say things are somewhat easier now. But we went and we did whatever we did. And my mom passed away and I didn't really give it any more thought. And then in 2012, I had a very bizarre accident, which left me in a wheelchair for more than 6 months, and then another solid year with a walker and a cane until I was happily, thankfully, fully recovered. But through that journey, I was noticing more and more about difficulties with a wheelchair, particularly, and the problems that you encounter with that. And again, that ended happily, and I went back to my regular life. And then my father, who at the age of 96, his body started to desert him. His mind was fine, but his body was physically not doing well. And so he wound up using a walker and then sometimes was in a wheelchair. And really the catalyst for Destination Accessible came from spending a lot of time with my dad. My dad loved to go out. He liked to go to theater. He liked to go to restaurants. He would have liked to go out to eat 3 times a day. And so I was becoming more and more aware of the difficulties of knowing what you're going to find when you go someplace. And so my father, who he was a great person, would go someplace and there was only a men's room, and a ladies' room, which had an accessible stall. However, when I was in the wheelchair, my husband pushed me right into the ladies' room. He didn't care.
Hmm.
I had a lot of difficulty pushing a 96-year-old
Yeah,
man into the men's room.
sure.
And so what would happen is, some nice young guy would come along and see my difficulty and would do that. And so that was great, but it wasn't a good enough answer because
Well,
not a lot.
you're depending on somebody to be the good Samaritan, right? You're depending on somebody to do the right thing. You depend on somebody to be there, right? That's not it's not always that's not always accessible to have a good person around you, right?
That is correct. So I was thinking more and more about these instances, and I was also calling more and more places before we would go someplace. So we'd decide on a restaurant, he'd decide on, what museum he wanted to go to, and I was finding that I wasn't getting the information that I needed, and it was not on their website, it was not on the phone. And so finally, after I had a 3 week condensed time with my dad, and I came home one day and I said to my husband, I can't stand this anymore. This is really, it's so unfair and it's so not nice. And if businesses are not going to put it out there, I'm going to do it. And however, I was very naive, very, very, very naive. I had no business background. I had no idea what I was doing. I enlisted my dearest friend at the time, and the two of us spent a year researching what we would want to do, how we would want to do it, what we would want to include. We originally thought about this site for seniors, only for seniors. And so our website is very basic. It has really no bells or whistles because we wanted seniors to be able to navigate it as easily as possible. And we researched what colors we should use, the font we should use, all of that. We really spent a good deal of time on that before we got actually her son and my son put the website together for us
Mhm.
and help design it. And we decided that we would only put on places people go for fun, because other places you often don't have a choice about.
Okay.
But if you're going out for fun, you should be able to have the best experience that you can. Everybody deserves to have a good time, and so our goal was to enable people with mobility challenges to have the best experience possible when they're going out for fun. So we want them to be informed, and we want them to make the final decision. So we're very fortunate on Long Island that you have choices. You don't have to go to a restaurant that you think is too noisy. You don't have to go to a restaurant if you don't like their food. You don't have to go to a restaurant that is too expensive.
Mhm.
So there are so many restaurants on Long Island that you can choose one that's good for you. If you have a hearing impairment, you want one that is, not as noisy.
Yeah.
And so I'll back up a bit and say that we decided we could only concentrate on one area.
Yeah.
People asked us about doing vision and hearing, and we were and still are so small that we can barely concentrate on one area.
Yeah.
So we chose mobility.
I love that you chose mobility. I mean, listen, we can't solve all the world's problems, right? But we can find out how to be a specialist in a specific problem and really accelerate that. And I love that you're doing that. The one thing that's coming up for me, and we're going to go to break in a second. One thing that's coming up for me is, you know, we're fortunate here on Long Island, just generally because of I guess, the density of opportunities of places to go. But I think as you go, even if you would go up to like upstate New York and things like that, things are much more spread out, like, and sometimes we go up to the Poconos, I'll drive through like Tannersville, Stroudsburg in Pennsylvania, and it's not like something everywhere. There's homes and homes and homes on big pieces of property, and then maybe there's a restaurant, so I think I would just, I guess my observation here is that here on Long Island, there's more opportunities. It doesn't mean that every place has made sure that they are accessible for people with mobility issues. However, there are more, so you have more variety, right? Where there might be a limitation in other parts of the state or in the country and things like that.
Absolutely. And that is true. And also in terms of what's on our website, not every place on our website is fully wheelchair accessible, I will say,
Mhm.
because different people have different needs. And so there's, many people, who just have a cane or are slow walkers or just need a handrail to get up someplace, things like that. So it's not, only for wheelchair users. And we're clear that not every venue on the website is fully wheelchair accessible, which would be I'll say the gold standard. Even though it would be really nice if every place was, that's just a fact that it's not.
Yeah, you mentioned excuse me, you mentioned the website a couple of times. The website, everybody, is destinationaccessible.org, all spelled out, destinationaccessible.org, destination accessible, know before you go. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. But I do, before we even do that, I'm going to say this. Recently, I was going to an event in the city, and I have a friend and colleague who's in a wheelchair, and we made sure to call the restaurant ahead of time and things like that. However, the restaurant was accessible, but it was like, this is New York City, gang, right? It was through like a freight elevator in the back because it just so happened that where we were going was in the basement of the restaurant. It was like a bar down the basement, like in a cellar. It was a cool venue, but it was like, that's not the same experience I had walking through the front door, going through the restaurant. My friend was in the freight elevator. So it's not exactly, that's not the same experience. And one other thing, I have a very close family. I don't want to call anybody out, but a very close member of our family is in a wheelchair. When we were going to a family event at a Knights of Columbus, like way out Southold on Long Island, it was either a Knights or a Legion, I forget which it was, but the point is, it was not accessible. I mean, how the facilities, the bathrooms were not accessible. Like, this is the stuff that, because again, Roberta, I've never had that experience. If I need to use the restroom, if I need to use the stairs, it's always there. I always have that. So we often don't see the world through other people's lens unless we put ourselves in that lens through that lens. And you have that opportunity to do that by your own experience when you're in the wheelchair and then with the walker. So, kudos to you and a blessing to you, because thank you for seeing this as an opportunity, and you're changing other people's lives. And we're going to get more into that when we come back. When we go to break now, which we're doing, I'll show you the website, gang. So if you're watching on one of the streaming, whether it be LinkedIn or X or Facebook or Twitch or YouTube, wherever else we are, you'll see that. If not, if you're only listening, which is great because I like to listen to things too, just check out the website later on, destinationaccessible.org. We'll be right back. Roberta Rosenberg, Tommy D in the attic. Right back.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
Back. your boy, the one and only nonprofit sector connector. Although I have realized, I said this a couple times on the program, I've realized that there are a lot of little nonprofit sector correctors. Yes, the correctors are there too, but a lot of folks are, and maybe maybe I'll just shout out some right now. Kellyanne Serini, my friend at Serini and Associates, the Imagine Awards, the nonprofit resource hub. Kelly's a good friend of ours, and her dad is also a friend of ours, but Ken Serini Associates. And I love when Kelly's like, Tony, we got to connect these people, we got to connect those people. And like, that's the stuff, man. That's what it's about. So the organization is Destination Accessible. Know before you go. I shouted out the website before the break, but if you're just getting here, destinationaccessible.org. Roberta Rosenberg is with me. Roberta, again, like I said right before the break, I mean, I don't have that challenge. I'm going to walk into a place and sometimes a restroom can be, sloppy and messy, but I'm probably going to be able to work my way around and get what I need accessibly. Not everybody has that ability. And it's not just restrooms. My mind is stuck on that. It isn't just the restrooms. It's the seating for where I'm going to have my meal. It's the seating for where I'm going to watch the show. It's the seating for, or it's the accessibility for me to tour the museum. It's all these things, and I Googled this. So a couple things I want to point out. A number of years, John Kemp, who was the former CEO of Viscardi, was on my program. And he's like, something, Tommy, some of us are born disabled and many of us are going to become disabled, right? So you said your dad was 96. First of all, wow, the 95 and a half years or whatever that he wasn't in a wheelchair or anything, like, God bless, like, right? He didn't become disabled until that age, right? Go ahead, please respond.
I just want to interrupt you 1 second. 83% of people with mobility disabilities were not born with them.
83%. Okay. 83%. I Googled it while you were talking before, and 42 million Americans have a disability. Not saying it's a mobility issue, but 42. So, I met a man just a couple weeks ago at a Queen's Chamber event where I was on a nonprofit panel. And this man has both, he had brain surgery. So he lost much of his vision and all of his hearing. And he was there at this, and we had a great call recently because when we were on, I think it was Google Meet that we used, because I think it was Google Meet, the captions were better because he's able to see it. I don't have time for that whole story, but the point was, we had this event at the Queen's Chamber, and unfortunately there was not any accessibility for him to hear or read the captions or whatever his way of intaking the information would have been. It wasn't set up that way. Things like that, we're talking about mobility specifically, but that's not how it's supposed to be. I mean, I heard you say a word before that I want to call out because it's right. And it's just not nice. Like, not that, like, that's not like the professional word, but it's just, where's the compassion? Like, that's a lot of what this program is and what I'm doing. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, giving people accessibility is not like, shouldn't be optional. It should be, of course we do that, and there's a group over at Viscardi specifically that works on accessibility for websites and things like that, and I had Mike Caprera, who's the CTO at Viscardi. I had him on a show here, and we were talking about, if companies don't realize that they need to make their websites accessible, because it's the right thing to do, well, then companies should realize they need to make their websites accessible because people with disabilities buy things too. Like, wow, I think I made a rhyme there. Just, you don't want to do it because it's right. That's fine. But I know you got shareholders to answer to or partners to answer to. Do you want to sell more stuff? Right. So, like, do that. It's not the right reason to do it, but I'm saying to convince people to do things, because when you don't have a vision problem, or you don't have a hearing problem, or you don't have a mobility issue, maybe you don't realize these things unless it affects your family, or unless in your case, it affected you for a moment in time. So that's the thing that I'm blessed to have friends and connections like you, Roberta, because you're out there on the front lines making the change and helping. However, I think you need more help, right? I think you need some more help, like, to do this, because And when I say help, I think the big help that everybody thinks we all need is, moolah, cash, do re mi, whatever it might be, whatever somebody calls it. But it's also, I think, the aside from that type of capital, it's the social capital, it's the relationships, and it's a lot what I want to get into with you today. But I've gone on a rant. I will bring it back. You rant now. It's your turn.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where to start. I mean, all the things you said are true. And yes, it is the right thing to do. It is the nice thing to do. And it is true that anybody who has a disability has a family, has other people that are generally with them,
Yeah.
or will tell other people about, this place was great because it was easy for me to get around. And mostly it's important. And people don't realize that when we talk about people having disabilities, and 83% of them were not born with it, you clearly discussed how you are able to get around. But the truth of the matter is that it could be you in a flash, and it was me in a flash, and nobody really knows when it could be you or a loved one that finds themselves either temporarily or permanently in a position where they are disabled in some way.
Yeah.
And so one of my goals, I've become more of an activist. Destination Accessible is not an activist organization. We are strictly educational. Our goal is to provide the information so that anyone can make an informed decision. And so all of our information is based on personal visits. We are not crowdsourced like Yelp or TripAdvisor. We do not have any place on our website that we have not personally visited. So anybody going to our website can see the date that we were there, the last date that we were there,
See that, yeah.
and what we found when they were there in terms of when we were there in terms of accessibility. So you have you have our vision. One of our signs at expos and things says, "We go so that you can know." And we want you to be informed. And it's important that businesses realize that, I think that all businesses should put on their website what their accessibility is. Everybody can't be accessible for a variety of reasons, whether their business was grandfathered in before the ADA law came into existence, whether there are other mitigating circumstances that don't allow them to become accessible in all areas. There are various reasons why places are not, I'll say, completely compliant. But there's nothing from stopping you from telling people what you have. There's nothing that should stop you from putting a little thing, even if, and I'm not just talking about the places that we visit, but I'm talking about anybody that has a brick and mortar business should, if they want to do the right thing, put on your website, on your homepage, just a little something that says, unfortunately, our restrooms are not wheelchair accessible.
Right.
So people coming to your business can plan ahead.
Yeah.
And it's just, I want to say, the nice thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I just was looking at trying to figure out, the ADA was introduced back in 1988, the Americans with Disabilities Act. In 1990, it was introduced to Congress in 88. In 1990, George H.W. Bush signed it into law, July 26, 1990. And it goes on to say, and I just Googled, gang, check it out. I Googled ADA accessibility law dates to just get a feel for it, but 1990 is a long time ago, man.
That's right.
Like I graduated high school in 96, and that's a long time ago, but sometimes I realize I didn't study for the earth science test, Roberta. I wake up in a cold sweat, realizing I didn't study for the earth science test. That earth science test was in 94. I had that dream 2 weeks ago. I don't know what that's
Feel
about.
bad for you.
I don't know what that's about. My point is that's a long time ago. So what do you have to say?
It is a long time ago, and there are people that will comment to us like, why isn't the bathroom in this place accessible? Don't they have to follow the law? but there are all kinds of reasons that they don't have to follow the law. There are reasons that they can't follow the law. Some houses that, many houses were built before 1990. Businesses that are in houses have a problem. Some people just unfortunately don't want to do it. If you have two steps going up to your doorway, it really is in many cases not a big deal to put a ramp, and yet people don't want to do it. I know people from Silo, from another organization, where people live in apartment buildings where they have to sue the landlord because the landlord won't put a ramp at the front entrance so the person in the wheelchair can get up one step. So
wouldn't the landlord feel differently if he or
yes,
she or their spouse or their child was in a wheelchair? Like, wouldn't
would
they
be
feel
there.
differently, right? There would be a ramp.
It would be there. Yes.
Yeah.
So there are many reasons. And again, it's not worthwhile for me to go into all the reasons why.
Right.
I feel like it's more worthwhile to say, just please tell people what you have.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And again, like, I think of this instance with the Knights of Columbus, like, you can call, like, I'm just going to shout out some of the restaurants here. Andrea's 25, a nice restaurant on in Woodbury on Jericho Turnpike. You have them listed on your website. You could probably during business hours get somebody on the phone there. But at the Knights of Columbus, or any of these places, like, I call, like, certainly Citi Field is accessible, right? I was at the Met game the other night, and I'm going.
It's great.
Yeah, if it doesn't pour rain tonight, because I think it's going to rain, but I'm supposed to be at the Met game tonight. But that's accessible. It's Citi Field, right? These big venues. But when you call places, sometimes my point was you can't always get somebody on the phone. I get routed around and bounced around and things like that. So your website is a great resource, and your questioning, or not questioning, but your advice to these folks is put it on their website and say, hey, shout out, here's where we're at,
It really would make life much simpler for many people.
Yeah.
And, even I can't, oh God, my phone is ringing. I can't shut it off. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
So in terms of calling,
Yeah.
we have, barely 1,000 venues on our website.
Yeah.
And so and the vast majority of them are Long Island and the New York City metro area. This is where we are. This is, this is what we do. And anytime I go someplace out, so we have a mini section on Vermont, a place that I go to often, things like that. So there are other places, but there are many places that are not on there. And so one of the things that we have on our website, on the lower left-hand corner of our homepage, you can download something called a tips sheet. Tips for suggestions for calling when you don't get the information online. And that is, hello, are you still here?
I'm here. I'm on your website. I'm with you.
Oh, I lost the picture, so
Yeah, because I pulled up the website because I wanted you to.
So in the lower left-hand corner, there is our tip sheet. And those are suggestions for what you should do when you have to call a venue to find out the information that you need. Because it's not as simple as calling. If you call up a venue and you say, I want to know if you're accessible.
Right.
Many times the person answering the phone doesn't even know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not because they are mean, or it's not because they don't want to help you. It's because they don't know.
Sure.
And so we have suggestions for, one of our main suggestions is if you're calling, you should call as early as possible as you can.
Mhm.
If you know that you're going to someplace in 2 weeks, you should call them now to find out about them. And if the person answering the phone hesitates for a minute, if you're asking about a wheelchair accessible restroom, ask them if they have seen it, because if the person hasn't seen it, they often don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you call in advance, I mean, I have had wonderful success in getting people to call us back. Not as an organization, but just calling to ask, can you help me with this and that and the other thing?
Yeah.
And it's really always best to ask, are you wheelchair accessible? Because that puts a picture in the person's mind of what you're looking for. If you say to somebody, I have trouble getting up the stairs, it's not the same thing as saying, can I get a wheelchair in your restaurant?
that's critically important to, and what a great resource that is on your website. So what I did on the website, everybody, is if you go down to the bottom of the website, it says about us, contact us, download checklist, and it says download tips for calling venues to ask about accessibility. That is so cool. Very thoughtful, Roberta. I click on that, gang, and then you'll see there's these questions. There's 8 different bullet points for you to look at. And, if I go down to hotel room, be very specific about your needs. Roll in showers, handrails, etc. What is it that you specifically need to be accessible? Because what somebody walking with a cane or a walker needs to be accessible is different than somebody who's in a wheelchair, right? And what they need. So what a great resource. We got to stop right here, go to quick break, and we'll be back in a minute or so. But thank you, Roberta. This is so helpful for people. I really appreciate what your mission is. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy and Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on TalkRadio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
That's right. I will tell you, not to be funny, but I will be funny. I'll try to be funny. I would not suggest anybody coming up to the attic with a wheelchair. It's not exactly accessible. It's a little messy. My wife tells me it needs to be cleaned on a regular basis. So that's just the point, that we should not put the attic on your website, Roberta. I'm trying to be a little bit cute.
We won't.
We won't. It's barely accessible for me trying to walk up here sometimes. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. I want to think in terms of, like, how did your career as a teacher inform the work you're doing right now? Like, what is the, even because I think there's, I remember you said we used to call it ESL, English as a second language. Now we call it English as a new language. Not that that's, I would say not that that's a disability or anything, not speaking the language, but it's challenging. So I wondered how did any of that experience in working with someone, you had to teach them something new, give you some kind of understanding to a community that has some challenges that they're up against? What do you think of that?
That's a really interesting question.
Thank you.
I never really gave it any thought. When I was doing that, I just always thought of it as helping to make, it's very similar, helping to make life easier for these kids. Doing everything possible for them to be able to be included and feel a part of our world as quickly as possible. And it's a slow process. There's no I had a father who one day who came in at the end of one year. He spoke English and Greek. And at the end of the first year that they were here, the child only spoke Greek. And he said, why does my son have to be in ESL again next year? And
Because she still didn't speak English is the point? He was only speaking.
the child certainly had learned a lot, but it wasn't, it's not a 1 year process, you know,
Right,
it's
right.
more than that. And so he needed more time than that. And I think, you know, my goal is to help as much as possible, but there are some things you can't do. You can't make things faster than they're going to be.
Right.
You can only do as much as to ease it as much as possible, or
Mhm.
to make that transition easier. So our goal now, when I really never thought about it that way, you know, our goal is to make life easier for people that have enough things to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And the truth, you know, I believe that everybody does deserve to have fun.
100%. I'm sitting here thinking. So I have this idea where I was telling my new friend Lisa Birch at Epic, Long Island, at a dinner meeting last night. I was telling her about the show I'm going to start doing, which is me on location with a film crew going and working with a nonprofit for a day, right? And then we turn that into like a 30 or 40-minute YouTube show of like a day in the life of me working with a nonprofit. And as I'm thinking of that, I'm thinking what we're talking about. I was like, who does all this work? You say you visited all these places. What a pisser, and I never curse on this show, but what a pisser it would be if I go around Long Island and I go with maybe you and me, we go to some venues, we go to a restaurant together, we go to this place, that place, and like have a team, and then that just might, maybe that the ripple effect is that it starts a spark of other people going out and making a thing, and we got like a, you know, I don't know, like crowdsourced information gathering of people going, hey, listen, I was going out anyway. So I happen to be having dinner at fill in the blanks, and I noticed they are accessible. Like, is there a program like that? First of all, let's do the thing I said about me going out and doing this. Let's just make a show about it. That'll happen. But second of all, it's like, how do we deputize people to go out? And maybe you're doing this already, or if you're not, how do we do that? What are your thoughts on that?
So we try hard to get volunteers who are willing to do that.
Mhm.
However, we have had several problems with it.
Okay.
And one of the problems, first of all, anybody who is interested has to be willing to follow our guidelines. Our guidelines are very specific. So it's very nice that you said, well, I went to a restaurant and I noticed such and such,
Right.
but it's really not specific enough.
Uh-huh.
For somebody to say, I'll just use Yelp as an example. So Yelp will have on its site, wheelchair accessible. Well, what does that mean?
Mhm.
It doesn't tell you, is the front entrance accessible? Do I have to go to a back entrance to be accessible? When I get inside, is everything on one level? There are restaurants where, some restaurants that I have been to, where it's accessible and they have a lovely accessible restroom, except to get to that accessible restaurant, you have to walk up 3 steps.
To get to the accessible. So it's not
Correct.
accessible.
But it is accessible in fact, because if you know, and you go in the side door, which is up halfway up the street, you're on the level for the restroom.
Right,
So
but if I'm having a meal in the restaurant, I'm just playing this out. What you're telling me, just so I feel I get what you're saying, is if I'm having a meal and I need to use the restroom and I'm in a wheelchair, I must leave the restroom, go a half a block up and go in the side door of the restaurant to get to the restroom, which in January and February might not be ideal.
yes. But if you know that that you can sit up at that level.
Oh, can I sit there though? Yeah.
Yes, you can go in at that level.
Got
it. So it is accessible. But if you don't know and you come to the restaurant and the restaurant has said that, where you call up and you say, because I made this mistake. This happened to me.
Yeah.
And so called and said, you know, oh yes, she said, we have a brand new accessible restroom, single occupancy restroom. That's another topic. And so we got there and I was like, oh, this is great. And so I asked about the restroom and they point me up the stairs. And I'm like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then the person said, oh, you could have sat up there.
Yeah, but
So
see that
we're talking about information.
but and my opinion is that takes education of the host or hostess who got you into the store going, I noticed you were in a wheelchair. I should be thoughtful enough to mention this, right? That's what I'm hearing on that one.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be only a person in a wheelchair, which is obvious.
Yes, right.
It could be one of my good friends who uses a walker and has a really hard time going upstairs.
Right. So okay. Yeah. There's a lot of ripples in this stuff. Yeah.
So going back to the volunteers.
Yes.
Okay. We have a volunteer checklist.
Good.
For people to follow. And you have to be willing to take pictures of all of these things, because on the website we have photos of everything.
I love that. That's so great. Because I mean, that's what if you gave me personally a roadmap, right? And let's say I took one or two of my kids out for 3 hours, 4 hours one day, and we bounced around the different places, like, then I would give you the checklist and the photos. And then all of a sudden, and I'm just saying me, but whoever would do it, you can really conquer this thing.
Yes, but they also, so the other thing is, which has been a stumbling block, is the person has to be willing to write about their experience in that venue. So we call it our read more. On the website, every venue has a read more, which is our personal experience on the day that we were there. And the final thing, which has been a real stumbling block to getting volunteers, is that anybody who is doing this has to be willing to give us their personal information, their address, their emails, etc., because we pride ourselves and we are telling people that this is based on personal experiences. This is what we saw. If somebody contacts us and says, what you wrote isn't correct, we have to be able to contact the person and check it out.
Check it out. So I'm sharing the website again while we talk about this. We got to go to a quick break, but I just picked one, 317 Main Street. Is that the name of this? It's called 317 Main Street. And
correct. Very accessible.
I would imagine that's the address too.
Yes.
In Farmingdale. Very accessible. So you can see just even the dining room, big dining room, open kind of floor plan. So if somebody has mobility issues, or if if someone's in a wheelchair, they can simply move one of these chairs, and they can move right over the table. But I see this checklist. It explains, what type of venue it is. It talks about, parking, accessibility. Very good. We got to go to a quick break, but gang, what I did was I went to the website, destinationaccessible.org. I clicked on this hyperlink here that for 317 Main Street, and then that took me to the story here and the photos and stuff. I want to talk more about this. What we're going to come back for our final segment in a second. When we come back, I want to talk what's upcoming for the organization, Roberta. How can we help? And I'm serious about getting involved, and because again, that'd be kind of like a fun campaign. And like you said, I maybe I make the nonprofit sector a little bit fun. So it's because I'm trying to entertain me too. So maybe that could be a fun thing, a cool campaign where I bounce around some destinations. We do a little Instagram, we do a little Facebook, we do some stuff. Tommy D running around with Destination Accessible. So we'll talk more about that when we come back. But just think while we're at break, what's upcoming? You want to say something before we go to break?
No, I said I'm thinking it sounds great.
All right, good. So when we come back, what's upcoming? What do you need? Who can we connect you with? Philanthropy in Focus. Right back.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
All right, this is the lightning round. Let's go. Ding dong, ding dong. Tommy's back. All right, so let's do it. Roberta, the more and more I think about it, I was about to text a young man named Jake, who is somebody I talked to, that he's gonna do some of the film work for me. And I think this is just gonna have to happen with your approval and your board and stuff like that. I'm gonna get a hoodie. It's gonna say destination accessible, although it's probably too hot for a hoodie now. We'll have to get some t-shirts made up. But like where I just go on location and because here's what I'm thinking too, and we'll talk you and I offline from a strategy perspective, but I'm just thinking, if I'm a business owner, why wouldn't I want to promote this? Why wouldn't I want to, if I, like, for instance, one of my clients owns like 6 or 7 restaurants. It's a chain of restaurants here. I'm not going to mention their name, but they're in the Mexican food business, right? And I have a lot of friends who are, and I'm not just stuck on dining, but I have a friend named, shout out to Mike D'Onofrio, Premier Payroll Solutions here on Long Island. Mike does a lot of work in the restaurant and hospitality space. He might be interested in, and he is interested in some of the stuff I'm talking about doing, like video. He might be interested in partnering up with me going out doing this. And these restaurants should be, I think, emboldened to want to work with you and tell the story, and say, hey, look, we get it. We want to be accessible. We're doing, we are, or we're looking to do that. And those who aren't, I'm not going to shout them out or nothing like that or be rude, but we'll focus on the ones who are accessible for the people you serve, right? What do you think?
I think it's great. And, I would certainly love to do that. We have asked any venue, fun venue, restaurants, etc.,
Right.
that feels that they are truly accessible, meaning, the whole gambit, truly wheelchair accessible, that where their restrooms are large enough to accommodate, some of the larger wheelchairs, the electric wheelchairs. That's a whole other category, because places that qualify under the the ADA, but are not new enough to have restrooms where you can't turn your wheelchair around in it.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing. Anybody that would like to invite us to come, we would be more than happy to come. I will come personally and, be happy to do that, because our goal is to get the word out to as many people as possible that could use this, could be helped by this, and as many venues as we can, as I can visit. I'm anybody that invites me, I am happy to go to.
Yeah. So that's really, I sound serious because I'm contemplating right now. Like, this is serious Tommy D right now. Like, he just showed up all of a sudden, but like, I'm thinking, oh, there he is.
He's always there in the back.
He's hiding in the background. I try to keep him at bay. But the thing is, there's so much opportunity here. And I'm glad you were persistent to remind me to get you out here on the show, because it tells me that, again, I have, my family has, people who have different abilities. And I shout out to the Lindy Lou Foundation in memory of my cousin Linda. That's just one of the organizations that I'm connected to, that supports the people with different abilities. But there's, you're strictly focused on the mobility issue. So let's capitalize on telling stories about this. I want to do stuff on a regular basis. Roberta, let's play with this. Let's come up with some good ideas. Let's put this aside just for a second. We only have a few more minutes left, because you and I can spend an hour strategizing. I want to know, is there other things you need? Are there other people you're looking to connect with? I heard you say people to invite you in, but go ahead, give me more of that stuff.
Well, we're always looking for, anybody who has a passion for this and, would like to consider being a board member. We're always, I'm always looking for somebody who feels, strongly about it and has, I don't want to say the same passion that I do, but close to that kind of
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah.
We certainly could use, we have trouble getting the word out. We could use a pro bono PR person. We have
Okay.
a very, very small budget. And so we want whatever is going to help us tell people about us. We want people to know that we exist if not for themselves, for somebody they know, for a colleague in their workplace. I suspect that everybody knows someone with a disability,
Yeah.
even if it's not in your family. So we want to do that. We easily we would like Google reviews. If somebody goes to our website and uses it, we know people use it. We get more than 8,000 visits a month to the website. We'd like people to just say what we do to
Yeah.
help us in that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be money, although certainly we're in need of money. But
Right.
every organization is in need of that. We've never had an event. And one of the problems for grants is that we don't do programs. We
Right.
are strictly a website. We are strictly educational, and that is our focus to get it out. I do want to say quickly, because when we started out, we're talking about wheelchairs and all of that, but so happily I have a grandchild, and when I was starting this, her mom said to me, what about baby carriages? What about mothers who, like I go someplace, I can't get in the door with the carriage,
Huh.
or oh my God, I can't get to the restroom. So we went from focusing just on seniors to going to kid friendly. And every review has whether or not they have a baby changing station, and how good is it for carriages. And
Yeah.
I will tell you that when you talk about, businesses that are, why wouldn't they want to do this? I have had restaurants say to my face when I've asked about a baby changing station, who have said, I would never put one of those in. I don't want those kids. So you think about that concept.
Well, okay, that's a whole nother show.
Right.
But yes, but yeah, look, you've opened my mind to a lot of things, and again, you know, I don't think I'm oblivious to things like this. I don't see the world through this lens every day. It's not,
Right.
I mean, I will tell you this, and I think I was talking to a friend of mine at this restaurant last night, and I'm noticing that when I'm in a restaurant and it's loud, I'm having more difficulty hearing the people I'm with. And I mentioned to my friend, the acoustics in this place weren't great for the meeting we are trying to have. We got to go in a second. But I mentioned it, and my friend says, you know what, Tommy? That's part of the ADHD, because you're listening for all these different things. And I didn't realize that it could be. My point is, I see the world and hear the world through my lenses, right? And my abilities, and other people through theirs. So we must continue to have conversations like this. I must go because I'm going to get in trouble, because the show is supposed to be over right now and I'm still talking. Roberta Rosenberg, thank you for being my friend. And thanks for being on the show today. I appreciate you. Lots more to talk about. We got to go. Make it a great day, everybody. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.